All right, so let's talk about computer crime, abuse, fraud. Certainly, you have heard tons about it. It's in the news, it seems, all the time. Some data breach exposed a number of credit card numbers or a number of internet passwords or whatever. So we get a lot of public interest on that for the large cases. It doesn't necessarily happen only at a large scale, though. Data is traditionally limited on this. There are some requirements that companies communicate any data breaches, or at least particular data breaches. We'll get into that in a minute. And there are all kinds of reports. This is one topic that's real popular to feature in news reports and so on. So here we have three providers. KPMG, you see, has a cybercrime survey that they put out periodically. There's a U.S. State of Cybercrime put out by the CSO and CERT. CERT is, I think, Computer Emergency Response Team up at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. So that is a survey that goes out every year. They used to do that in conjunction with FBI up until about 2015, I want to say. Now they just do it on their own. And then over there on the right, you see the Report to the Nation. That is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners that put that out every 2 years and actually present it, or at least present highlights of it and unveil it in front of the United Nations. Okay? So computer crime is basically manipulation of the computer or computer data to dishonestly obtain something, acquire property, take something of value, cause some kind of a loss. Any of those could be classified as a computer crime. A computer abuse would be unauthorized use of or access to the computer against the wishes of the owner. So you jump on someone's laptop that they left and start using it. That's computer abuse, which may or may not be classified as a crime. And of course, lots of examples in the book that you can take a look at. News sources, you've got hackers working all the time to try and steal data. So there's computer crime basically taking place on a constant basis. Now, when it comes to accounting system, fraudulent financial reporting actually does fall under the computer crime statutes because unless a company is completely paper-based, you're looking at some computer technology involved in the preparation and presentation of financial reporting data. Statutes have been used: mail fraud, wire fraud, in RICO cases throughout history. Computer crime is kind of the modern equivalent of those that is broadly applied. Misappropriation of assets. So again, this can be done with employees fudging records in the system. And again, you'll find plenty of examples in the textbook. With just a cursory review of the news from time to time, you'll see examples there as well. So we've got all kinds of federal legislation that has come down over the years. Probably the primary ones is the CFAA, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And you can see it was originally passed in 1986. It's been amended multiple times since then. And this one coalesced all of the discussions on computer crime and gave it a federal level definition that defines it as an illegal act where computer technology is essential in the perpetration, investigation, or prosecution of that fraudulent act. And this brings up a point that the actual person committing the fraud does not ever even have to touch a computer for there to be a computer crimes classification, pursuit of it as a computer crime. So if I'm talking to someone trying to social engineer my way past, say, a sales agent or someone I'm talking to on the phone and get them to do something on the computer that gives me access to something I can take advantage of or commit fraud with, that would qualify as a computer crime. Okay, so here we have all kinds of different types of acts that can be classified under the CFAA: unauthorized use, modification, copying, destruction of the software or the data, theft of money, illegally obtaining information or tangible property. So maybe transferring money from a bank account to another or adjusting property records online somehow. Acts against the computer hardware itself, trafficking in any stolen information, extortion. Ransomware would be a good example of that. I actually had a contractor that was working on a project that I worked on way back when at the U.S. Mint that bragged about having some ransomware with a client that he was afraid would never pay the bill. And so he put basically a bomb in the software he wrote for them that turned it off after 6 months if they hadn't paid the bill. And sure enough, they didn't pay the bill, and so they ended up calling him when the system didn't work, and he was proud of the fact that he was able to get his money that way. Unfortunately, that is highly unethical, and they could have pursued him with a criminal case if they wanted to. I think they were probably embarrassed by the non-payment and decided not to, but it does kind of shed a light on how it can be used in many different ways. Other legislation: Fair Credit Reporting Act, RICO, Freedom of Information Act, Federal Privacy Act, FERPA, which certainly you have had a chance to possibly even look into and operate under, Small Business Computer Security Act, Federal Computer Crime Act, CFAA, the one we've talked about, and the list continues: Computer Security Act, HIPAA, which came about in the late 90s, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. That one is geared towards copyrighted works of art, books, movies, music, that type of thing, TV shows. Uniform Computer Information Transaction Act, USA Patriot Act. That was one of the responses to the World Trade Center bombings in 2001. Homeland Security Act, Cybersecurity Enhancement Act, Federal Information Security Management Act, Spam Act, an initial attempt at regulating spam, which has not proven to be super successful. Spam filters have actually been better at controlling spam than Spam has. There are estimates that 80% of email traffic is spam. And a lot of it gets filtered out before you even have a chance to flag anything as spam. It may not even make it to your spam mailbox because it gets filtered out as well-known spam. So you've got one level of spam that you'll never see, another level of spam that possibly you review in your inbox or your spam folder every now and then to check and make sure nothing slipped through that shouldn't have. And then you have the even smaller amount that actually makes it into your inbox through the spam filters, and then you still have to deal with that. And then Personal Data Privacy and Security Act. All right. In addition to the federal legislation, we do have now state legislation in all 50 states. So every state has a computer crime law, so they all kind of have their own definitions. They define all their terms, including, and these are some of the key differences between most of the state laws, basically which acts are going to be classified as misdemeanors versus which acts are classified as felonies. Computer crime and accounting systems, well, it kind of makes sense. That's where the records of the money are in companies, so the AIS can be a favored target, and it's especially a favored target for insiders in the company as well. So if I'm a disgruntled employee and after years of kind of joking around, I wonder what a gruntled employee would be, I actually looked it up, and if you look in the dictionary, the word gruntled does exist, and it basically means someone who's satisfied and content. So there you have it. Language lesson for the day. Disgruntled employees like to, if they have a hunch or if they want to get back at their employer, maybe have a hunch they're going to be losing their job. You could see them digging into records, maybe trying to ruin records, steal data, transfer money, whatever. So you get all kinds of actions taking place there. And of course, from an accounting perspective, we tend to be responsible both inside the company when it comes time to configuring the ERP, and from a review standpoint as auditors, understanding the design of the controls and how they got put in place, being able to test them, and inside the company, of course, figuring out which controls need to be put in place to begin with and getting them up and running. Of course, there's the ability to mislead the public, which is what the SEC is all about preventing. Most fraudsters are not going about trying to get caught, so it can be difficult for a sophisticated fraudster for the activity to be discovered. So we have large numbers of losses in fraudulent activity in organizations.